Would living in France be as magical as it sounds? What are the things you need to be aware of before taking that leap? I'm Kalie.
And I'm Josh, and this is Expats Everywhere. And today we're going to break down France. How can you move there legally? What are taxes like? And where should you move to?
Let's start with your visa options. There are a variety of long-stay visas, such as moving for your job or as a student. They do have a talent passport for skilled professionals, entrepreneurs, researchers, and artists.
Of course, you can invest in a business or be an au pair, but let's take a closer look at two visas that might fit your needs.
The retirement visa is actually called a visitor visa, or VLSTS, and with this you'll need proof of sufficient funds to support yourself. It's normally pegged to their minimum wage, but that could vary. It would be safe to be making around or a little under 2,000 euros.
A few popular sources of income that are acceptable would be through a pension, retirement income, investments, or rental income. So you don't actually need to be retired from work to apply for this visa, but you're not allowed to engage in any paid employment or business activities in France under this visa. However, remote work from a company outside of France or managing investments is typically allowed, as long as it does not require you working with French clients or earning income from French sources.
To apply, you'll need things like proof of accommodation, health insurance, a criminal record check, a letter of why you want to move to France, and a few other documents like your passport and application form. Depending on where you will live will depend on how you apply. It could be an in-person appointment through VFS Global or a consulate.
Now when we say golden visa, it's a little different than countries like Portugal. This type of visa deals more with business activity and is obtained by direct investment, job creation, or ownership in a company.
The goal is that this investment contributes to the French economy and can be done in a variety of sectors. To apply, you'll need things like proof of financial means, a business plan, health insurance, and a few other things like the other visa we just mentioned.
So that gets you into France legally, but where should you live? Of course, the capital is quite popular. Paris is also the largest city in France, having over 2 million people in the city proper.
It's important to note that Paris is considered one of the most expensive cities in the world. Rent for something like a small one-bedroom apartment would range from around 1,000 euros on the very low end and up to 2,500 euros on the high end. Sometimes it can be hard to find good housing just because of the demand.
Yep, a meal at an expensive restaurant will be around 15 euros, and grabbing a beer out can be around 7 euros. Of course, things can be pretty pricey in Paris, but if you want to battle the tourists, then you can frequent iconic locations like the Eiffel Tower or the Louvre on a daily basis.
Another large city is Marseille in the south, which will give you a very different feel from Paris. It's also not nearly as big there, with under 1 million people.
Rent and overall costs here will be significantly lower than Paris. Marseille will offer the French Riviera lifestyle with a Mediterranean climate and multicultural vibe. There is an art scene here, and it's considered to be more laid back.
One thing to note is Marseille is known to have a reputation for crime, so be careful when looking where you want to live. There are some neighborhoods that are known to have high crime, particularly in the northern districts. As with most places though, just be aware of your belongings.
If you want to stay in the south and go a little smaller, you could consider places like Nice or Montpellier. A little more central and close to Switzerland is Lyon, or you could explore Lille up by the Belgian border.
All of these options will give you the feel of cities, but they offer different architecture and climates. Obviously, a place like Lille in the north will have cold winters and mild summers compared to a place like Nice that will have mild winters and warm and sunny summers.
I like Nice. For a smaller French city with around 100,000 people, you can check out Caen in the Normandy region, Autun, known as the gateway city of the Loire Valley.
Good French.
Thanks. You have plenty of options from big cities to small towns.
Now, France has long been known to have crazy bureaucracy. So how bad is it really? Well, it's definitely complex and slow, which can cause frustration. It's going to feel very strict and lots of paperwork. So be patient as you navigate things and don't be afraid to hire a lawyer for help. We have these types of resources if you would like that type of assistance.
When it comes to taxes, it can get a bit tricky. You'll have to check what income tax bracket you fall into. On the lower end, you're looking at around 11%, and on the upper end, around 45%. They do have a capital gains tax and inheritance tax as well. Just be sure you do your research or talk to someone about your situation before moving so you can prepare for your taxes.
Also, something tricky is the language. Not so much learning French, but should you speak it? Depending on where you are in the country will depend on whether they appreciate you trying or they just want you to stop trying.
If you're planning on going to a smaller city, then it would be good to know some French, absolutely. Obviously, the bigger cities will have many people who speak English, but France's global ranking for English skills puts them into the moderate category, which might surprise some of you as being lower than you thought. So dust off those old French language books from high school and start practicing. That will also be helpful when you navigate the fun bureaucracy.
We, of course, can't talk about France without mentioning food and beverages. France is known for its cheese and charcuterie boards. Of course, you can pair this with one of my favorites, wine, and they have amazing wine there. You might also like to eat a dish like ratatouille or try one of their delicious pastries.
Absolutely. The French cuisine has a variety of dishes from soups to escargot to foie gras. But don't worry, you don't need to eat all of these every day, as you'll find a big blend of different cuisines around the world, especially in the bigger cities. Enjoy wine, champagne, cognac, or many of their other iconic drinks that France has to offer.
Okay, so lots of variety in cities, a few good visa options, wine. So the big question is, would Josh and I live here? And if so, where would we live?
All right, so let's chat a bit about France.
Okay, well, we can start with wine since I love to bring that up. They have great wine, so that would definitely be a perk.
Yeah, I think that when you're looking at France, you have to balance a couple of things, at least from my perspective, okay? First is, can you get on with the social scene there? Like, is it your social scene? Because you might have some interactions that
you don't like,
you're not used to, you're not comfortable with, let's say, how French people interact. They're not the softest, kindest, warmest people.
Yeah, maybe. They're not blunt. Would you say blunt?
No, I would say it's similar in the U.S. where people in the north are known to be a little more abrasive.
Yeah,
people in the south are a little more open and hospitable.
Yeah.
I find that to be the same in France.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
The further you go south, like the warmer, the nicer, more
the
hospitable.
French Riviera, so everyone's just chill.
Yeah,
that is true. We have definitely found, we've traveled a lot of France, and we've definitely found that in the north, especially in Paris, the people can be a little rougher.
Yeah.
As far as just interactions, and pleasant interactions happen a lot more in the south.
Yes.
Yeah. So there definitely is that.
Yeah, and then the weather gets better in the south, is better than in the north.
Yeah.
So there's that. Like, do you want a cooler climate? Because the north might offer that. In saying that, like, the cities, for sure, well, not just the cities, but places in the north will get very hot in the summer still.
Yeah.
Like, Europe tends to get pounded with like
heat waves and
heat
stuff.
waves.
And it does depend too on like where you're located. Like, obviously, if you're sitting in a valley that might hold in the heat, then even if you're in the northern part, it could still get really hot. So it kind of depends on which city you're in.
Yeah.
But the weather is really nice in the south in the winter. You know, like if you wanted to get away and be away at least from like harsh winters, it's nice in like December, January time in the south.
Yeah. So one of the things I like about France, just going back to kind of the sociocultural things, I like the rhythm of life there. They have a laid back kind of cafe culture, bar culture. You can get a vermouth or something like that and sit out. Who drinks vermouth?
I think a lot of people do. A lot of people do. I'll get wine.
You can grab a glass of wine or
cognac, right?
Or cognac, some sort of digestif, and hang out. And that's acceptable.
Yeah, they do have a really good work-life balance. So, sometimes people think that's a good thing. Sometimes people think it's a bad thing. It tends to be a bad thing when you're trying to get something done. Like we did mention the bureaucracy of things.
Yeah.
But overall, it makes for a very comfortable life to have a good balance. So you can enjoy like the cafe culture and such.
Yeah, it's more chill. One thing to take into consideration, depending on how sensitive you are to safety and just street wiseness, I would say that France is a place where you have to be a bit more on guard than you do in other places in Europe.
Yeah, I believe it has a fairly low rating for safety.
I think
for
it might
Europe.
be the worst in Europe, or at least the worst in Western Europe, something like that.
Which again might shock people, but that and the English thing, like we mentioned before, might be a surprise to people as well, that they're actually kind of low on the scale for their English skills.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so we live in Portugal, which is known to be safer, and we travel a lot to France, and we notice when we get into France, we have to turn our spotty senses up just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not crazy, I would say.
No.
Like, I feel in certain U.S. cities where I'm having to turn it up even more.
That's true.
But
just being
still
aware.
be aware. But because we live in Europe, we're able to travel to France quite a bit. And I actually do enjoy traveling to France. We've got a trip
coming up.
a
couple weeks.
So we get another kind of mid-sized city to check out there, which we have noticed that we're becoming more like second city people. So we don't like Paris, but we do like a place like Marseille.
Yes. Or Nice in the south.
Yeah.
And then, obviously going smaller, Bordeaux. I really like Bordeaux as well. And not just because of the wine.
No, Bordeaux's
but it's a
fantastic.
beautiful, beautiful city. So, I mean, France just does have a lot to offer. I think one thing we did mention too is taxes could be something that you really need to look into. You might have something, a favorable tax percentage. You might not. So it's good to talk to someone beforehand before making the leap, I guess.
Yeah, if you're a retiree, someone who has passive income, you might have quite a favorable tax scheme there, tax breaks there.
And they do have, good visa options too. So it's not impossible. I think sometimes, especially Americans or those coming from outside the EU, think I would love to live in a place like France, but how do I do that? Like, it seems like it's really difficult. And while, of course, you have to go through the paperwork and the proper channels, you do have options for visas. So check out the different ones.
And speaking of visas, that kind of leads to another point I want to bring up, and that's the citizenship option. France does have one of the, let's say, easier pathways to citizenship if you're outside of the EU. So if you are EU, there's not as big of advantages to changing your citizenship. However, if you are outside the EU, let's say you're American, Canadian, whatever, but let's maybe more focus on Americans, then you need to live, there are some exceptions to this, but you need to live in France for 5 years, have B1, which is kind of like moderate levels of French, so B1 French. And then you will be required during the application for citizenship to take it's kind of like a historical, cultural test for France.
Yeah.
So that's
they
not
want you to know,
not bad.
No, they want you to know the culture, of
Yeah.
course. That's not bad. They want you to know the culture, speak a little bit of the language. It's just going to make things more comfortable for you anyway in the end.
Yeah, so some countries require 10 years for naturalization, whereas France is 5. And I think that's good. That's totally doable.
Yep. Okay, so I think we're at that time.
Yep.
You want to explain that time?
Okay, so we ask each other a question at the end of all the videos like this. Would you expat that? And what we mean is, would you want to move to France or whatever country, France to,
France today.
let's say a medium term, definitely on a visa, but a couple years, 3, 5 years, whatever.
Yep. So would I expat France? I think this is a very easy one. Yes, definitely. I think it has a lot of good qualities. While, you do have to be aware of the safety aspect. I really like more the inner part of France, and then the south along the French Riviera is really nice. So I definitely could see myself being there. I would not go to Paris. Too big. We talk about this a lot.
Travel there, but
yeah, visit, but I wouldn't want to live there. But I think it'd be very easy to live in France. And you?
Okay, first, I'm shocked that you said that you would.
Oh.
Just because I haven't heard you talk glowingly of France ever.
I've not said anything bad about it. France would be very easy.
You've said bad stuff about France.
I like the food would be good, the wine would be good, the safety okay, but I think it'd be very easy to live in France.
Okay, well I'm gonna say yes.
Okay.
So while I wasn't shocked, I was like, oh, okay. So maybe we could move to France one day. But no, I agree with Kalie. We haven't traveled enough of the center part of France. We've been to Bordeaux. We're about to go to, the next place we go to is southern. We like the south. We like the south of France. So I think if we were to move to France at some point in the future, it would be the south of France. Climate and people are two things that are a massive draw there. And then the cost of living is lower than a place like Paris. So,
it is, yeah. That's definitely something to consider, your budget and where you want to be.
Yeah. So if you want to actually compare France to where we currently live, you can click on this video right here. And then if you want to check out other European countries that we recommend and we've made country guides for, you can check out this playlist right here. Now let's get moving. Bye.